How's it going, Patreon folks? I created this tutorial with the intent of kind of creating an exercise for someone who is not comfortable with geometry notes, definitely wants to learn it, but it's just like watching beginner geometry notes tutorials are so boring. And the best way I learn is just by kind of diving in and trying a bunch of different random things that look cool. Eventually you generate a pool of knowledge. So this is that kind of video. So what I'm going to do is show you how to create this structure, these structures you're seeing in front of me. So we're going to create these really cool ways of creating this interesting subdivision so that you can put spheres and all this really cool stuff. You see massive subdivision, small subdivision. It's all over the place. So that's, I'm going to run that kind of drill. And then when you're done with the video, you can go back and goof with it, play with it, try to understand why it works the way it does, along with, what I'll be explaining. So with that being said, let's just open up another instance of Blender and jump into geometry nodes. Make sure you are in the latest version of Blender. That's just to make sure we all have the same nodes. All right, so let's go up here to geometry nodes. And then let's get a plane. We just have to have some amount of geometry to start with that will house the geometry nodes workspace. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the group input. We're going to go Shift-A, go to Mesh Primitives, and get a cylinder. Now, I am going to create a cube, but we're starting with a cylinder. Why? Because in geometry nodes, you're able to click the none, which now creates a hollow. Normally it's n-gon. You can go to none. Unfortunately, the cube doesn't have that feature, the cube node. You probably have to run some weird mess that is not necessary. So what I do is I give myself 4 vertices, and then let's go ahead and orient it. So we'll hit RX90 and then RY45, which would be rotating it on the y-axis by 45 degrees. We now have a cube. On the radius here, I'm going to leave it, but depth, we're going to go to 10, which means, this is just kind of arbitrary information. We're just learning how to model, but for your own information, in geometry nodes, if you scale an object by 10, it's technically half of that in real space. So if I hit S5, notice that it's encompassing my piece here, but yet this is supposed to be a depth of 10. So I'm guessing it's like, I don't know. I can't explain it, but it is that way. But that's really not going to change anything with what we're working on. So now I'm going to go here to wireframe view, and then I'm going to hit the tilde key and go to the right or the left. It doesn't really matter. We want to be able to see these vertices come in. So here on the side segments, click it until we see squares, which would be side segments of 8. So now these are perfectly square segments, and the reason why we're going to do that is we're going to go get a subdivide mesh node. That is going to allow us now just to subdivide to insane levels. But I'm going to keep it at 1. So now we start the part that this is about, which is a really cool process to create very interesting subdivision within different faces. It's really cool. So what we need to do is get in a separate geometry. We're going to go from point to face. Now we're going to get a random selection. Oh, sorry, random value. I think I've said that many times in tutorials. We're going to go from float to Boolean. And I know that when you're starting out in Blender, words can just kind of seem like gibberish. What does that mean? In this specific case on this node, Booleans in the modifier sections mean you can cut a hole through other things with other objects. In this case, with this node, Boolean simply means you get one slider and a seed value. That's it. And the reason why that's valuable is it simplifies what we're looking at now. Our probability is on one slider, and say, hey, I don't like that position. Well, then you can change the seed value. So that's what Boolean means here. Don't get confused with other Boolean. It's like, what is this, the English language where one word means multiple things? I don't know. But Boolean here, that's what that means, just to alleviate or remove your confusion. So now we have this, but what are we supposed to do with it? Well, we have this fun little socket here. Socket's not the right word, but you know what I mean, called inverted. And what that does is it's literally the inverted selection. So say if I bring my probability to the middle here, see how that's open? That's a gap. Watch, it's going to fill in when we do the invert. So now that's literally the inverted delete separation, whatever. What's cool about that is we're now going to get a join geometry. And this, if you've ever done shading, is like your mix shader. So now if I plug this in, it's now going to fill back up. But now we have access to those. So what we can do is I'm going to take this subdivide mesh and hit Shift D and just throw it right here on that bottom string. And now we have some interesting subdivision. Look at that. So we can do that now. And you could do that infinitely. Literally infinitely. So now what you can do is bring this join geometry over. Let's go ahead and get in a separate geometry node again. Throw it there. Get this random value. Shift D. Throw it here. And now that's going to start to separate those already subdivided pieces. And so now if I bring it here, let's put the inverted into the join geometry. Get another subdivide mesh. Throw it there. Now you have interesting, sorry, where is it at? Aha. Now you have these interesting abilities to subdivide things in a very unique way with this. So let's see. So now you have this, and you could just keep doing that forever. In my case, I left it here because now we're going to go ahead and model a little bit, which is going to be a Shift A search mesh to curve, curve to mesh, and we're going to get a curve circle, which is going to dictate our radius. So we're going to go back to flat view here, plug it there, bring your radius down. Boom. Now we have modeled this, which is just so cool. And then, hey, let's go ahead and get another join geometry and access these points to put spheres on there so we don't have to see those cross sections. This is more getting into design, but you get it. So this join geometry is where we can begin to put things to model. Everything behind this join geometry is simply modeling our wireframe. So now what we can do is get an instance on points. Where are we at here? Instance on points. We'll plug it into the join geometry. And then our join geometry here, plug it into points. And then let's just go get an icosphere. Plug that into instance. Now we have this. Cool. And this is our piece. And what's great, now we're done. We're done. What I did with mine was I kind of instanced it down the line. Now it finished like I do with my loop tutorials. But what I can do is I can just click on this whole thing, hit Shift D. See this number 2? We'll just click that and then bring your radius in. And then make everything smaller. So we'll, on this curved circle, make it really thin. And then on this icosphere, here we go. Now we have this, and you can make it smaller too. But yeah, that's how that goes. In fact, we will make it smaller here. What's this on the curved circle? 0.3 radius here. We'll do a radius of 0.1. But we're essentially done right now. I'm just kind of ad-libbing. And then I'm just going to rotate it till it's sitting. So we can have this really cool design. Now we can throw a camera through it. And in my case, I remember subdividing it heavier. There we go. So it's a little more distracting inside of here. But we've completely procedurally created this very cool structure that you can then do some cool stuff with. And if I show you what I did with mine, I'm just going to exit this. You guys are going to have access to this file. But I turned it into a loop, which looks like it's in cycles, yeah. Which I ended up turning this into my desktop wallpaper. But you can also do it in Eevee. But yeah, but this cycles version is going to be available to you guys. So you can look at the extra stuff I did with volume, with modeling, with lighting, and see what you can take it with yourself. But the goal of this tutorial is to give you kind of a practice lesson to kind of go back and goof with. And if you have any prior geometry nodes knowledge, you can throw it in there too. Or you can apply it and do whatever. But with that being said, I hope you learned something from this. I think geometry nodes is such a valuable thing to learn here in Blender, and I can only see it getting better. So I think it's awesome to learn. But with that being said, I will see you in the next tutorial. I appreciate you supporting me here on Patreon. It really does help me out, helps me keep doing what I love. So thanks, and I will see you in the next tutorial.